Welcome to the Doctor's Mentor Show. If you believe that medicine is an industry and not a profession, if you enjoy submitting complex reimbursement claims, or you would do another residency just for fun, be advised, you're about to be offended. You should probably leave now.
All this talk about mentoring doctors is ridiculous. I thought doctors learned to do everything better than everyone else the first year of medical school. At least that's the way they act.
If you love assisting patients with vitality breakthroughs, if the right to practice medicine without interference is important, and you want expert tips for practice freedom and profits to support your epic life, welcome aboard and prepare to be blown away. The Doctor's Mentor Show starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Lori Barr.
Welcome to the Doctor's Mentor podcast for this week. And I am so pleased to bring to you the expertise and the practice experience of Dr. Ted Koren. Now, Dr. Koren has a very interesting story, many very interesting stories. And let me tell you that he was born in Brooklyn. He survived the public school system. After he graduated from high school, he wound up in Miami and went to college, was a BA in communications, is a master communicator. And then he went ahead and went to chiropractic college, Sherman College of Chiropractic, which is world renowned for straight chiropractic. He then, after starting his journalism and editorial practice at the college there when he was in school, he graduated as valedictorian, started his own practice, founded his own school, has put out millions of pamphlets of information that are seen all over the world. He's the most widely read chiropractor out there. And what he has learned in the years since his graduation, practicing as a solo practitioner, practicing in a school, academic environment, he has a rich experience to share with us on this podcast. So he has graciously agreed to join me and share some of his practice secrets with you. I'm so excited about this. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here, and I'm honored to be with you speaking today.
Well, let me ask you, at what point in your growing process did you decide that you wanted to be involved in the healing arts and help people live their life to the best?
Well, my experience in healing was really probably a little different from most people. My parents and grandparents were not much into regular medical care. Having come from Europe, they really knew the old world ways. And growing up in Brooklyn, I remember I had gotten pneumonia, possibly from my mother's cooking. I'm not sure, but I hope she's not watching. Anyway, no, I got pneumonia. I was in really bad shape. And everyone was real worried. They called it, walking pneumonia, which I never really understood. I guess as opposed to hopping and skipping and jumping pneumonia. But they was walking, and everyone was very worried for me. And the MD came. They made house calls in those days. The pediatrician came, Dr. Iserson, I remember. I'm sure he's not alive by now. And he gave me a shot, and I think it struck a sciatica nerve. And I was paralyzed on one side.
Oh, my goodness.
And I couldn't walk, and I was in horrible pain. And he came a few days later to give me another shot. I have no idea what the shot was. This was in the early 60s. Anyway, my grandmother headed him off at the pass and pretty much told him she threw him out of the house. And then she called the chiropractor. So here, not only do I have pneumonia, but now I can't walk, and I'm in horrible pain. And the chiropractor came, and he made house calls too, and worked on me, and I could walk right after that. That day, I was able to walk, and after a few days of being paralyzed, it felt pretty good.
Oh yeah.
And the next time he came, he worked on me, and my pneumonia cleared up, and I was able to repay that years later when I was speaking at a group for old time chiropractors, and I mentioned a story that I had just had. A friend's daughter she had pneumonia. She had just gotten from the hospital where they took lots of x-rays, and she was in really bad shape. And I brought along the portable table, and I worked on her, and I saw her twice, and her pneumonia disappeared. And a guy in the back of the room says, son, in my day, it only took one visit to get rid of pneumonia. And I thought it was. I said, well, she was on a lot of antibiotics. And he said, okay, I'll give you that extra day. So anyway, I was very happy to been able to repay people many times over. But I didn't know chiropractic as a backache therapy. To me, it was a way of getting rid of pneumonia and getting rid of paralysis. And later on, when I went to chiropractic school, I realized that the ancient or the old traditional ways of chiropractic care were incredibly powerful.
So I want to steer this just a little bit. So what freedoms do chiropractors enjoy that other healthcare fields may not embrace? What freedoms in practicing have you found in chiropractic that, for example, you don't see in your brother's traditional medical practices?
That's true. My two younger brothers are MDs. Well, they come to me for care all the time. So I guess there must be something I do that they like, and they have their whole family worked on. But what I have found is chiropractic, the philosophy is different from medicine. And that's what makes it unique. It's really what's known as vitalistic or empirical philosophy, a philosophy that was very popular in America in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then unfortunately, most of it was destroyed by politics. But the philosophy was fascinating, and essentially I boiled it down to this. When people say to me, what do you do? I answer, have you ever met a doctor who can locate your deepest stresses, physical and mental, stuff that you might have had for decades or since childhood or birth, and release them? That's what I do. Awesome. And that is really old chiropractic philosophy is locating the blockages. They call them subluxations. But to me, that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor for blockage, interference, stagnation, which is found in all the natural healing arts. In acupuncture, they talk about permitting energy to flow. Same thing in Chinese medicine, in ancient Indian medicine, in traditional osteopathy, and many traditional healing arts. The goal is really permitting energy to flow, locating areas of blockage or stagnation. The osteopaths talked about blood stagnation. Other healing arts talk about lymphatic stagnation. Chiropractic is based on the nervous system being blocked or interfered with. The nervous system stagnation. My work really takes all of that into account. But not only that, there can be emotional stagnation. I think John Steinbeck wrote, a bad thought can kill you as quickly as a bad germ. Actually, D.D. Palmer, the discoverer of chiropractic, had a very nice little aphorism. He said there are three main causes of dis-ease, D-I-S-ease, meaning body malfunction. And one is trauma, which he ascribed to getting the vertebra of the spine or other parts of the body slightly tiny bit displaced, blocking the flow of nerve, putting pressure on nerves. The other one is toxins, and the third is thoughts. So I call it the 3 T's, thoughts, toxins, and trauma. And in my work, Koren Specific Technique, I like to address all three. And many healing arts do address them in different degrees. And the trauma can be from birth trauma, could be falls in a child. They say that half of all children have had a fall from a height by the time they're 2. Falling off the changing table, off the bed, parents dropping a child, God knows. You've probably heard stories like this since you've been in practice. Doing radiology with pediatrics, you've probably seen your share of trauma.
Yes.
And then this is not that uncommon. So there's trauma that we carry from childhood, and then there's sports and athletics and all kinds of things growing up, that accidents, injuries, even micro trauma, working in the same position over and over. Secretaries working in the same position. They talk about carpal tunnel or T3 syndrome or T4, or low back problems due to repeated stress on the lumbar vertebra. And so what I do is I look for blockages. And it could be vertebra, it could be toxins, it could be emotional trauma. It could be anywhere in the body. Do you know that I was blown away because my work is really a work of exploration. You never know what you're going to find with somebody. And I remember doing it's very light tapping, actually. We use an instrument. You can use your hands. I prefer an instrument. Women with bladders, men and women with bladder problems, incontinence, it's usually the bladder is slightly inferior, slightly off center, a slight tap, and it disappears.
Wow.
I mean, it's amazing. People with atrial fibrillation, heart palpitations, skipped beats, panic attacks, they're in bed and they feel their heart pounding a lot. A lot of times their sternum is just off center a little bit, and it takes a moment to correct it. You think it's a big deal. It's not. Slight tap on the sternum and atrial fibrillation disappears.
So you mentioned your Koren Specific Technique, and you're describing some of the results from it. What's amazing to me is sometimes I've seen in medicine when someone has a brilliant idea and they develop it, one of two things happens. They either try to sequester it and keep it all to themselves by getting a patent and worrying about who's stealing their idea, or they do the exact opposite, which is what you've done and what I love about you. You even teach patients how to take care of themselves with your technique, which is amazing. So I wonder if you could help some physicians and other health healers, healthcare providers who may not have the confidence yet to share their knowledge with others. They may think they still have to protect it for themselves, because we all know that's an ego function, whether we want to admit it or not. How did you get to the point in your confidence that you knew you would still have plenty of patients, even if you taught them how to do what you're doing?
You know, that's a great question, and I've thought about that. And when I started discovering this work and started going down that path, before I was mostly writing and teaching and publishing, and now suddenly, oh my God, I've got this thing that works. What am I going to do with it? I had a very powerful feeling that if I hold anything back, I will get less inspiration. In other words, the source would dry up if I did not honor what was coming to me. So instead, I tell people, I don't hold back anything. Any seminar, I give you my all. I don't hold back any ideas or thoughts. And if I have some crazy theories, I'll share that with you also, because I want us all to grow and learn from each other. So to me, it was a feeling. It was really selfish that if I held back, I would get less. And I feel the same thing with doctors, too. And
so what I want to point out there is that you listened to your gut. You listened to your intuition, and you followed that course. Even if it was selfishly motivated, as you say, you followed that gut feeling and trusted it, and it has served you well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I had no choice. If I stopped listening to it, my gut feelings would decrease. At least that's what I found deep down. And so I said, let me just go. You know, it happened sort of accidentally that I discovered this. I was in a bad accident, and I was disabled, and I was in constant pain all the time. I could barely walk. I had to give up my license to practice. And this went on for 10 years, and I was getting worse, and sciatica pain started so bad I could barely walk more than a few feet at one time. I couldn't use my hands. So, of course, you're not too good if you're a chiropractor and you can't use your hands, actually. And so I was just in horrible pain. Pain is the motivator, you know. And when I teach my work, just to get a little bit, to digress just a tiny bit, when I teach my work, I talk about the pain doctors are in. And doctors, it doesn't only have to be physical pain, because a lot of people who do physical work, like chiropractors and body workers, they're in a lot of physical pain from years of struggle with doing their work. But it could be emotional pain. You're not getting the satisfaction you want. You wanted to heal everybody, and you wanted to help people, and you're finding so many times it's not working. So you're frustrated. There's an emotional pain. And along with that, even though there are exceptions, I feel there's a financial pain. Because when you stop doing what you really love and it becomes a drudge, I feel like you can't hold on to money.
Yes.
It's just an observation I made over the years. There are exceptions to that. I have seen some really terrible people with a lot of money, but that's a whole theological discussion. Why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? I don't know. But I've noticed that on an average, when doctors are unhappy with their lives, financially, they are not attracting the success they should have.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's really why this podcast exists. It's to help doctors live their best, live full out, so that they can influence the people around them, their practice partners, their spouses and kids, and their patients to live better lives through their example, rather than having the doctor not take care of themselves. Who wants to go to a doctor who doesn't know how to take care of themselves?
Oh, yeah. And unfortunately or fortunately, our families are our best teachers.
Yes.
You know, after I got myself better working on myself, my second patient was my wife that had migraines. And it took about a second to correct really a sphenoid cranial bone was slightly out of place. The migraines never came back.
Wow.
14 years later. And my arms, legs, hands pain, neck pain, head pain, sciatica all cleared up within a few days. Which at 10 years of doctors, and I traveled all over the country finding the best of the best, and they couldn't get it. So, we learned really from ourselves, our children. What was that old saying, that prayer? God, can I finally have a blessing that's not in disguise? It's like enough already with the pain, okay, enough. Get me just a good thing. So let me just have fun for it anyway. And you get too many blessings in disguise, but they are blessings actually. And it led to learning how to, not just to work on myself and my family, but I started teaching. And I realized what I discovered was a way that doctors can use to tune into themselves to find the answers. I call it a binary biofeedback device. Binary because it's yes or no, biofeedback because we're reading the body. And in a sense, we are able, through our autonomic nervous system, to pick up things that normally intellectually we might often miss. And the only reason why I'm teaching it and doctors are using it is because it works. And it works better than anything else I've seen or anyone else I've seen. Right now we have 3,000 practitioners doing this work. We're going to be in Las Vegas in about a week or so teaching it. And I travel around the country in different cities.
So let's just, if somebody wanted to see when the next time you're teaching is, do you have a web address they could go to and see your schedule?
Koren Specific Technique, Koren Specific Technique.
.com?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And, there's stuff on YouTube also. My wife is very upset because my students have put hundreds of videos on YouTube and I barely put any. And she says, everyone's going to know them and they won't know you, and you develop thing. I said, yeah, you're right. I guess I better do something about that. There's so many things we can be. You can be a doctor, you can be an educator, then now we have to be media experts and marketing experts. And it's not easy to wear so many hats.
So let me ask you, it sounds like the 10-year period where you couldn't practice and you were in so much pain may have been the largest roadblock or obstacle you've had to really enjoying your whole career as a healer. Was there some other roadblock that was bigger than that, or is that the largest one you've faced?
Oh, that was a biggie, because I just didn't. I was in pain all the time and nobody could help me. I remember looking at a photograph of 3 uncles, and they were sitting around, and one had a walker and the other one had a cane and the other one had 2 canes, and they all had hip surgery and back surgery, discs, fusions, what have you. And they're 3 brothers, right? 3 old uncles. And I thought, oh my Lord, is this going to be my fate? Mm. And I was getting depressed. I was miserable. The pain wouldn't stop. And I had no idea where the answer would come from. And it seemed to come out of nowhere. It was like a coincidence. Things just came together. Various techniques I had studied over the years. Finally, it was like the marriage made in heaven. Things clicked. And that's why after 10 years of suffering, 5 days later, I was out of pain.
That's awesome.
And I started traveling around the country, just working on sick doctors. Because I figured if anybody would be my best teacher, it would be sick doctors who had seen everybody and were still sick, just like me. And so I specialized in diseases of the sick doctors and their families, because it worked so well. Suddenly, I don't have a license to practice anymore. I gave up my license. And suddenly I'm getting calls and people driving in from all over the country for care. So I got my license back. I didn't want to get arrested. And I started working mostly on doctors and their patients and their families. And I started teaching. I wanted to teach because I said, this is crazy. I can have people traveling so far. Let me have teachers in their areas, doctors in their area. But the cool thing about this work is you can work on yourself. And a lot of doctors, they have nobody to go to. They're very frustrated. Yep. And they can actually work on themselves and correct a lot of serious health problems just by self-care. Very simple, easily, and quickly.
So if you, let's do a time warp here and pretend that you are in your sophomore year of college and you're contemplating a career in healthcare. What would you do differently if you were in that situation today than maybe you did when you were in that situation? How would you advise somebody so that you live your best life as a healer from that point forward, rather than having to make up for all the blockages you caused through the emotional trauma of getting yourself into this quagmire to begin with?
Oh my God! If only I could turn back time. I fantasize about it. I shouldn't, because it's not a healthy thing. We figure we're probably in the right place at the right time at this moment.
But let's say we're here in 2015 and you're a sophomore in college. How would you advise somebody?
I'd say get married. Don't wait. Get married young. It's probably the healthiest thing you can do for yourself. Don't wait around. Don't spend 10 years dating and running around like a fool. Get married, have a family, have lots of kids. To me, I became very traditional. And I realized, this is really what it's about. Family type, work to make sure the family you came from is healing. Find somebody who really loves you and you love, and you're on the right page on so many areas. Of course, I would have been eating a lot better. My Lord, that was a whole other story. What did we know as kids? We didn't know anything. The food. It was hard finding. Now we're in a golden age. Do you know that? We're in a golden age of healing, and the internet, the traditional medical model might bemoan it, but the fact is, there's more information going through, and people have wonderful opportunity. The fact that you're doing this is actually a sign of the wonderful richness of information and learning and exploration that is available to us. And we didn't have it then, and I'm sure we all have our stories of struggle and failure and frustration. And maybe other people won't have that because of this great wealth of information. But, maybe they just have to do their journey and they'll have their own headaches.
Well, and there's always that resistance that, resistance is the shadow to genius. So while we may have been ignorant because we didn't have the internet, how many young people do you know can't build a relationship because they think they have to communicate through their smartphone?
That is actually rather tragic. I remember just heard a speaker a couple of weeks ago talking about how there's a problem in people's brains. They think that texting gives them emotional fulfillment, and it's the same thing as being with a person. That is a serious problem.
Yes.
And I know that the old concept of the Sabbath or Shabbat, there are families that say we turn off all electronics for one full day. And you can do it the whole day or from that evening to the next evening, however you like to count the time. But we say no electronics. That includes TV and telephones. My God, the family's going to be together, and we're going to do things together, and we're going to not be distracted. And that's actually very good for personal relationships, husbands and wives, and relationships with the children. I just thought about it because you had asked me earlier 3 things, and I thought, I should have said that, but now I'm saying it. One of the 3 things is to at least recognize one full day of the week where we just are at rest and not distracted, and with building loving, healing relationships.
And even if you happen to be in a place where you can't be around your family of origin, or you're not at that point in your life where you have your own family you've created, you can still take that day to get to know yourself better, to just concentrate on meditation and prayer and introspection and really thinking about where you want that next part of your life to go. Because if you don't plan it, then it's going to happen by somebody else's plan. And that's not the best way to live your life to the fullest.
Yeah. And that goes back to following your instincts and your gut, because too many people feel lost. And any pain they feel, emotional pain, is really pointing the way toward healing. We have to honor our pain and not fight it, but accept it on not only a physical level, but an emotional level. Pain is a teacher. And, we're motivated by pain. That's the way we are. Patients come to us for pain. It's very rare a patient comes to me and says, "Yeah, I feel great." No, they're a mess, and and they may not know why. And when I started doing my work, I decided to be like a blank slate when I was exploring a person's stress level, biofeedback. And the problems were from physical. Almost all psychological problems have this physical manifestation. I didn't make that up. The homeopaths said that, and I'm sure this is thousands of years old. There's no such thing as a purely physical or a purely emotional illness. Fascinatingly, the homeopaths would cure physical illness by looking at the emotional component and giving a remedy for that. And they cure emotional illnesses by giving a remedy for a physical complaint. It's rather fascinating, but they saw a continuum. And, we can't say we're mind and body and spirit. We're mind, body, spirit. We're spirit, body, mind. We're all mixed up. And by affecting one part of the body, we can affect our mind and spirit. We're like holograms. One part can reflect the whole. And by sometimes working on one area of a person's life, you find deeper areas are healed. And it's just because we're so interconnected within ourselves. So spending one day of peace and meditation and reflection, reading good books, being inspired by authors, absolutely wonderful. In fact, some Jewish writers would say that the idea of the Sabbath every seventh day should really be reflected every day of our lives. Every day there should be a part of it that is a Sabbath, that is a moment for reflection.
Well, Dr. Ted Koren, you have certainly shared so many things that we can all reflect on in our next quiet time that we take with ourselves. And I sure appreciate you spending this time with us today. And I want you to say again the website where people can contact you or any other method you'd like for them to contact you.
They can reach me through the website, KorenSpecificTechnique.com, Koren with a K. Or they can call the office at 267-498-0071. And that number is, we'll get them to the main office. And if they need to reach me, messages will go back and forth. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. These were wonderful questions, and I'm very rarely asked such profound questions and such insightful questions. So you're a great interviewer. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So that wraps up the Doctor's Mentor. And you all know our whole goal here is to keep you on track to have your best life as a healer so that you can influence other people. So thanks for tuning in.
There's more to explore at thedoctorsmentor.com.
Are you stopping at a hospital? Hello? Don't you know that hospitals are one of the sickest places on the planet? Don't touch anything in there and get out as fast as you can.